So I guess we're ready to get started. My name is Joan McGrath. I'm the Executive Director here at Plan of Massachusetts and Rhode Island, and I'm joined by my colleague, Kathy Vitello, who is the Director of Operations. And as I always say, more importantly, she is a licensed social worker. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to drop them into the chat box, and we'll answer those at the end. So let's go forward with the learning objectives. Our first learning objective is to gain a deeper understanding of what a special needs trust is. So we hope that you get that from this presentation. We want you to understand how this is beneficial to you and to your family, and to learn the responsibilities of a professional trustee. So who is Plan of Massachusetts and Rhode Island? We're Planned Lifetime Assistance Network of Massachusetts and Rhode Island, or PLAN. We are a nonprofit 501c3 organization serving as a professional trustee for individuals of all ages and all disabilities in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. The key there is that we are able to provide special needs trusts to people of all ages. That is restricted in a lot of states, but we are able to do that in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. We were founded by parents of children with disabilities who were worried about the future of their children. We are the oldest and largest special needs full trust in New England. And this year we're celebrating our 50th anniversary of being in business. So our mission, we help people with disabilities, lifelong or related to illness, injury, or age, to live well by providing the coordination of social services, preservation of assets, and protection of benefits. That is words that we live by. We actually do live by these words. You won't find other trusts set up that are identical to us because we are the only special needs trust that provides has social workers on staff. So what is a special needs trust? Our history dates back to the early 1960s when a group of parents who had children with disabilities got together to share their concerns, fears, and anxieties about the future of their children. They worried who was going to look out for and advocate for their child after they were gone. These fears, anxieties, and concerns continue to be expressed by parents today. You know, Kathy and I meet people all the time that that wakes them up at night.
Yeah, they worry who's gonna cut my son's toenails, or who's gonna make sure that my child has the right bedding and clothing, those kinds of
living
things.
in a safe environment.
Right.
You know,
Same discussions that the families were having in the 1960s.
Yeah.
So in 1993, the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act, I always mix up those words, it's referred to as OBRA, was signed by President Clinton. And within this act, it allowed for the establishment of these special needs trusts, which were set up to supplement somebody's needs, and funds could be put in these trusts. They wouldn't be counted as an asset for somebody that was on public benefits. But the funds would be available to pay for the goods and services to meet the needs of the individual. You know, they finally, after many years of advocating, recognized that public benefits don't meet everybody's needs. You have to fall within the poverty guidelines, and there's a lot of things that aren't covered. So at Plan, though, at the end of the day, our goal is we're hoping that we enhance the quality of life for
so
people.
in Massachusetts, it's a $2,000. They can't
Asset.
exceed $2,000,
Right.
and in Rhode Island, it's $4,000. So this, a special needs trust, is that we're calling an opportunity or a vehicle for families to be able to set aside funds for their family member to ensure that their wishes and wants are met without impacting the person's benefits. It's considered a non-countable asset.
Right. So, you know, throughout the presentation, we will talk about one of our beneficiaries who joined the trust. It was set up by her parents originally, so that upon their passing, funds would go into the trust to help supplement your needs. So you'll hear Joan and I talk about Jane, who is now in her 40s, has a diagnosis of autism, lives in a group home, and how we use this trust to not only supplement her needs, but improve the quality of her life. So when we look at Jane, choosing plan as the trustee took the responsibility away from her siblings.
Is this the woman was set up originally with some other trustee?
Right.
Yes.
So her parents did the right thing by planning for her future. However, they chose a trustee who was another family member. I think it was actually mom's sister-in-law, if I remember correctly. But by the time that she became trustee, she had many of her own medical issues and really felt like she couldn't manage that. And she shopped around. She talked to other trusts out there. And actually, at the end of the day, she chose plan mostly because of the service coordinators. And that is what makes us, I think, the most unique in New England, actually, is that we are staffed by social workers. And they work with the beneficiaries and their families throughout the life of the trust.
Right, so other trusts don't have social workers on staff. That's what is unique about Plan. So what does the Special Needs Trust do? It protects the beneficiary's assets and preserves their eligibility to public benefits. That is a key reason for setting up a Special Needs Trust. It's, as we said, a non-countable asset, so you can maintain that $2,000 asset limit.
Right, so, you know, if you're on SSI and Medicaid or SNAP benefits, those things are not impacted by the trust, and the trust can still pay for the goods and services. And another reason for picking a professional trustee, so to speak, is families, and we see this all the time, you know, parents set up a trust, they name a family member, and most of the time it's a sibling. And when the time comes, sibling says, nah, I don't think so. I think I want to do this instead. So this is a way to make sure, and Joan will talk in a little bit about how to do it, but this is a way to ensure that your wishes are followed.
So why do you need a Special Needs Trust? So proper planning for the future creates peace of mind. It enables the beneficiary to preserve their public benefits. And we keep repeating that because once you have lost your public benefits, then you need to reapply, and it is not an easy process. And as Kathy mentioned, it improves family relationships. It allows siblings, to be supportive, not have to be in a position to say no. And it assures that the future needs of the beneficiary will be met.
So as we just mentioned, you know, in order to be eligible, it's called a means test, which is based on your assets. And in the state of Massachusetts, it's 2,000. In the state of Rhode Island, it's 4,000, which meets the poverty guidelines, and it doesn't cover anything. So there's been some recent studies that Joan and I have looked at. One of them is from the National Disability Institute, which reported that an adult with a disability can require 28% more income or an additional $17,000 annually to maintain the same quality of life that you and I would have. So they're having the Special Needs Trust help supplement that. So we have seen it, if someone loses their benefits, as Joan mentioned, it can be very difficult to get back on. Actually, it can be more difficult than applying initially because you have to justify where all the money went. And according to the CDC studies, there's 22.9% of the people in Massachusetts have a disability. And disability costs and healthcare expenditures can be up to $11.7 billion in the United States. So when you're thinking about benefits, you're thinking about current and future needs, and there's many programs out there that you can't get into without having Medicaid or Mass Health. And if you look at your SSI benefit, the value of it can add up to anywhere between $375,000, $400,000 over the person's lifetime of 40-year span. So if you don't do the proper planning, then you can really be in a really difficult situation.
So types of special needs trusts that we offer. We're professional trustees, so we offer first party or D4A, which would be one beneficiary and one trustee. There is a Medicaid payback to that. It allows private funds to be preserved for the sole benefit of the person with a disability, and it protects eligibility for public benefits. A third-party standalone, which we also administer, is funded by it's usually a family member or somebody, a friend, somebody that is the donor and puts the money in trust for the benefit of the beneficiary. And in this case, it is, again, a third-party standalone is one trustee, one beneficiary, but there's no Medicaid payback. And that's huge. That is a reason for proper planning. This allows private funds to be preserved for the sole benefit of the person with the disability and makes the person eligible for benefits. And the third type of trust that we administer is what's called a D4C, or a pooled trust. And there are two components to that. It could be a third party or a first party. So if it's pooled, it's pooled for investment purposes only. So in this case, it would be many beneficiaries and one trustee.
And then there's one other option. That's the future funded.
Right, you could do a future funded where you plan to fund the trust later on, possibly by when you pass away. Your will would then instruct the trust to be funded, and that could be that would be the third party future funded. So examples of ways to fund a trust. There's the third party through life insurance or an inheritance, or the first party through settlements. We have met people, Kathy and I have met many people who feel they can't ever die or retire because they don't think they will ever have enough money to support their child. So, you know, this obviously is not a comfortable way to live. So we always encourage people to start their planning. There are ways for you to start a trust. One way is to set up a future funded third-party trust for the benefit of your child or your loved one, so that the trust would fund upon your death, and you can do that through life insurance. So it's something called a beneficiary designation form, and no matter what happens, that form would allow the trust to be funded, and you wouldn't have to worry about it. So again, you'd pay your premiums, and upon your death, the trust fund would be funded for the child.
Right, and you can do that with your retirement accounts, IRAs, right?
Yep.
Anything that has a beneficiary designation on it.
So often we recommend people set up a third-party trust so that and fund it if they're able to do that, if they're in a position to do that, so that the beneficiary has a chance to learn how it all works, and the donor can learn how it works. They can feel comfort in knowing that what the process is and that their child is being taken care of.
It's not such a shock to the beneficiary when the time comes that the trust is funded.
Right.
This is a strange person telling me what to do and how to spend my money.
Yeah. So now that you know more about special needs trusts, how do you choose the right trustee? So one of the things I want to keep talking about is that money in a special needs trust is a non-countable asset. So special needs trusts protect the eligibility for benefits and allow for a higher quality of life. Money spent from the trust is to supplement needs not met by public benefits. So how do you choose that trustee? I don't know if you want to talk about Jane, or if we should, but services that are needed when you're setting up a trust, you want to talk about services that are needed now and what will be needed in the future, so you can determine how much money you think you need for that trust. What technical skills and knowledge are needed as the trustee? And being a trustee can be a full-time job. Does the individual in mind have time to dedicate to it? And you should always remember that a trustee can be a nonprofit organization. And if you're setting up a trust over the age of 65 for yourself, having a nonprofit is your only option to be a trustee.
Right. So, excuse me, we already talked about Jane, and that, they picked a trustee that wasn't able to fulfill that duty. And Joan and I worked with another family where the family had picked a sibling, And the sibling they picked actually moved across the country and really wasn't able to provide that oversight. And the sibling that lived close by, there was some conflict between them. And the parents were really concerned that they maintain a positive relationship. So I think in any relationship, when you put money in the mix, doesn't matter who you are, it can create a lot of conflict. And this removes that responsibility, and family members can maintain a good relationship with the beneficiary and not have to deal with the money. And the beneficiary feels supported because now they have a family advocate that will help them navigate.
Right. So next slide. Pros of using a professional trustee. As Kathy said, it removes the responsibility from a family member. You know, all trust, investing, accounting, taxes, fiduciary reporting are handled by the professional trustee. That's a lot to ask of a family member. Professional guidance of the use of trust funds to protect the eligibility of benefits. As I said, we have licensed social workers on staff that understand the rules and follow the rules. We currently are listed in what's called the Program Operations Manual for the Social Security Administration, and they set the rules for special needs trusts. We are quite knowledgeable of those rules and follow those every day.
Right. So, you know, every request is really looked at and evaluated to make sure that there's not a negative impact on benefits. And sometimes family members or friends, they don't do it knowingly, but they will do things that will have a negative impact on the benefits.
Mostly because they don't know. They
Right.
don't know that they're doing something wrong.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
and we hear that story all the time. They think they're doing something good for the beneficiary. And Social Security turns around and says, nope, we're going to decrease that benefit.
Right, right. So, and then you should know that the security of knowing that the funds that are in trust are invested and they're for the sole benefit of the individual, and that being invested, we check on them quarterly to make sure that they are in fact, the investment manager is doing their job and that everything is safe in the investment that they're being held in. So features of special needs trust with plan. So the first one is very important. We require no minimums to establish a trust. Banks often have minimums of 500,000 or even $1 million or more. So many people are not in a position to have $1 million to put in trust. So that's why a pool trust makes the most sense. Costs to have a trust plan are more reasonable. It's cost effective, and each person's money in trust is held as a sub account, but it's invested as a whole for investment purposes only, so that we get the most bang for our buck. So I think I'll continue. We offer support through our staff of knowledgeable, experienced, compassionate social workers, and we operate an all-inclusive model. That includes review and payment of disbursement requests, professional fund investment, annual accountings, tax reporting preparation, and service coordination.
Right. So when we talk about the social workers and the service coordinators, we really want to know who the beneficiary is. We want to meet the beneficiary. We want to see their living situation. We want to make sure their needs are being met. We want to make sure they're accessing everything they're entitled to. Often people don't realize what they're entitled to as well. And we look at the current needs and what maybe the anticipated needs are. And when we say that, we're talking about a group of social workers, there's 8 or 9 social workers at this point, and collectively, there's probably close to 200 years worth of experience sitting in this office with all kinds of disabilities and benefits. So we kind of think maybe down the line that some things might pop up. And when we do all that, we then talk about the things that would probably enhance somebody's quality of life, what their interests are, what their kind of wish list is. And they stay in touch. They become the primary contact for the beneficiary and their supports.
So I don't know if you want to talk about Jane in this situation, how this has impacted her.
So, yeah, so in Jane's case, when we got all done with all the necessary things, her needs and future needs, we began to get to know Jane and what her interests were, what her wishes were. And she was artistic and really liked art and music. So her social worker was able to help coordinate and get her into a music program, which she goes to twice a week and has really blossomed with going to that program.
So that's just the type of expense that she wouldn't, her benefits wouldn't pay for. So
Right.
this is something the trust supplements.
Mhm.
And there's other types of art, music,
Music,
pet therapy.
Yeah, Reiki, alternative therapies that some people want to use, massage therapy, and vacations. We have people that actually go on vacations. There's some travel agencies out there that work specifically with people with disabilities.
Right, so it's a way to, again, we say a quality of life for this person. Because they are not allowed to have more than $2,000 in assets. You can't really live on $2,000 worth of assets, so you need to have something else in place. And you need it to be administered in a way that is not going to negatively impact those benefits.
Right. And, often when people find out that there's a trust in place,
Yes.
they go, oh, well, we don't have to fill out the paperwork for Medicaid to get a certain equipment, or, oh, and we had this where, oh, the beneficiary wants a brand new barbecue grill and a patio set with 6 chairs and a new shed. So
Yeah.
that wouldn't be sole benefit. And that's one of those things where the social worker is able to protect the beneficiary from being exploited.
Right, and in that case, that person lived in a group home and was in a wheelchair, so
Right.
that they did not need a patio set.
Or a barbecue.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So what we try and do is work with the beneficiary, and the social worker knows their situation. They know how that person's living, and they're aware of, who is submitting those requests and what's behind it. So it's important to have someone like that in place. So for a D4A or a third-party standalone, you must use an attorney. But if it's for a pool, the D4C, which was the third on that list, we highly suggest you use an attorney, but you don't need one to complete the application. So if you don't have an attorney, and as I said, we strongly recommend you work with an attorney because it is a legal document and you do want to get the best advice that you can. But if you don't have the name of an attorney, we are happy to provide 3 attorneys in your area that specialize in special needs trusts. I don't know if you want to talk about the.
So I think that, and we have this conversation with people all the time, when we say that you want to talk to an attorney that specializes in this area, this is a very special area of the law. So if you broke your bone, you wouldn't go to your eye doctor to get your bone set. You would go to orthopedist, somebody who specializes in bones. So there is a group of lawyers out there that specialize specifically in this area.
Right, so it's really important that you follow up with an attorney. But again, if you wanted to start with us, give us a call. You can check out our website. We can answer many, many questions. And at least it would get you started on the path to a special needs trust. We don't charge for calls. You can call as many times as you want. You can ask as many questions as you'd like. We realize that there are a lot of benefits questions. And somebody like Kathy is extremely knowledgeable and understands the rules and can help answer those questions. So
yeah, and we recognize this is a big decision for people, and it can be frightening and
overwhelming. And
yes,
yeah, because we understand it's your loved one and it's your money. So those are huge. It can make people not act. They know they should or they want to, but they're not sure where to go, how to move forward. So call us. Again, it doesn't cost anything to ask questions. So if you were to start with us, you would complete an application. And once the application is complete, there's a
joinder for a third party.
Yep, for a third party, it would be a joinder agreement, which is reviewed by an attorney. And once the trust is funded, the trust is open. It takes, it's pretty quick once you've decided you want to do this, but once you have funded a trust, then you meet the service coordinator and you would work on a life care plan.
Right. So that, as a family member, you'd be able to not only tell us all about the beneficiary and the people involved in their life, their interests, but at the very end, we want to hear what your wishes are for these funds, what you would like to see happen with these funds for your family member. And we do try to honor that.
Oh, so I guess we have some questions. So I guess I'll read the question. What is the difference between a trust established for my child versus a special needs trust? So I'm not clear on the question. So a typical child can have a variety of trusts, many of which are, this says revocable. A special needs trust is an irrevocable trust. It is set up specifically for people with special needs, and they have access to the funds. It protects their benefits, but because it's irrevocable, it's not viewed by the Social Security Administration as being accessible by your child. So it's set up in trust for the benefit of your child, but it is not something they can get their hands on. So if it's a revocable trust, that means that there is the possibility that they could get the money, and then that makes them ineligible for benefits. And I would be happy to talk further about this, or if you want the name of an attorney to talk to about this, but do you have any? Yeah, I think as far as I can see from the question, I think I answered it. How to align the trust to be the beneficiary of insurance policies and such. If you have any sort of document that you are leaving to your child, you should put together a beneficiary designation form that specifies who the benefit is. So again, this is where we talked about life insurance policies or retirement benefits. You would go to your carrier and say that you want the remainder person, the person to receive the benefits, to be the third party special needs trust for the benefit of. It's specific language, because if you left it right to your child and they're on benefits, they could lose their benefits, because now they have more than $2,000.
Right, or it would become a first party trust.
Or it become a first party trust.
And then it's subject to the Medicaid payback.
Right. So if you can avoid that, you should just set up the wording into a third party trust, and then you avoid the Medicaid payback piece.
Right. So, and I don't know if we talked about this, but so when we keep saying Medicaid payback, if it's a first party trust, which means the funds originate from the beneficiary,
Their own funds. Yeah.
right, then at the end of that person's life, Medicaid is entitled to be paid back for anything they paid out during that person's lifetime. And then in a third party trust, if somebody passes away, whoever the donor has designated is who will receive the remaining funds in the trust.
Right. So that would be in this case.
Yeah.
You could do that through this beneficiary designation form through your life insurance or your retirement benefits. I hope I answered that question well enough. Have there been any significant changes to the trust laws in the last 10 years? We talked about this. There's always tweaks, but the largest change was the ABLE account. And an ABLE account allows a person with a disability to put up to how much money a year away?
So annually, it's whatever the gift tax rate is, and it's still 15,000 annually. So you can never exceed that amount.
Right.
And you can only have one ABLE account.
So you have one ABLE account, and you can put the money that you earn into the ABLE account.
Right. So that would, if you have a beneficiary that's working, they can put an additional amount of money in on top of the 15,000. Once it reaches 100,000, your benefits are suspended. You don't lose them, but they are suspended until you go back under the 100. And once it hits 500,000, you lose your benefits.
So, so ABLE is relatively new.
Mhm.
A special needs trust, you can have as many special needs trusts as you want. You can have third party, first party, but the benefit is that there is no limit on how much money you can have in trust.
Mhm.
And the trust can be used to put money into the ABLE account. The ABLE account can be used only for
qualified disability expenses.
Thank you. So can you give us a couple examples of
So
what that would be?
when we say that we're looking at an individual's benefit, when we talk about the SSI, which is the supplemental social security income, we really should not pay for rent, food, utilities, because that's what they say that those funds are for. However, with ABLE, that's considered a qualified disability expense. So somebody could take the funds in their ABLE account, pay their rent, and not lose any money out of SSI. But going on a vacation or having some supplemental, like the music lessons and stuff, would not be considered qualified disability expenses.
Right. So they work well together. So that's why it's important to view them as
Partners.
exactly. So we actually are considering doing another webinar talking more about the relationship between Special Needs Trust and ABLE. We've done that in the past with other organizations, but we haven't touched on that in this presentation. So if people have interest, please let us know. We'd be happy to put together something about the ABLE account. The next question, our daughter is on SSDI. A relative left her some savings bonds. Can they be used to begin funding of a trust? And so, yes, they can be cashed out at the face value, then put into the trust. Be mindful that it could be considered an asset before you do that. So the very idea that she has these in her name is considered an asset and could kick her off benefits if
Right.
it's over $2,000.
And then they would be that would be a first party trust if they've already been left to her.
Yeah, right. So you can set up, and again, this is where we said you can have a first party or a third party.
Or both.
Yep. Oh, right, exactly. I'm sorry, both. You could definitely have both. How can plan be used for assistive technology purchases, and what sort of assistive technology would apply? Anything that is for the sole benefit of the beneficiary can be purchased with the funds in the trust, as long as it is not already paid for by their public benefits. So again, it's a supplement. And the ARC, I'm sure, has recommendations of assistive technology purchases that could be made for that person.
And the other thing is that sometimes what's covered by the benefit and what's recommended could be different. And we can pay for the upgrade as well.
Right.
So the benefits paid, say, $2,000, and what you want is actually $3,500, then we kick in from the trust the rest of the funds.
Yeah. Can you do automatic deposits? So it is possible. We have to work with the institutions doing the deposit. So for instance, we have an annuity payment, and that is the only way they can make deposits. So we have a account set up for the beneficiary. So the automatic deposit goes into the account, and then it's transferred into the pool or into the investment. You can't deposit directly into the investment, but it's possible. It's something we can do. We've noticed over the years that that's happening more and more. Our preference is to have checks because checks are paper and it's easier to track. But yes, we can in fact take automatic deposits, depends on what it is. If I have a special needs trust and I'm on SSDI, how do I turn over the trust to my daughter when I die? She's also on SSDI, Mass Health, DDS. So the short answer is when your trust documents are drawn up, you would list your daughter as the remainder person. In this case, you've already told us that she is on SSDI and Mass Health. So the way to avoid that would be to have this Medicaid payback is that the wording would say left to the special needs trust, third party trust for the benefit of your daughter's name. And therefore, upon your passing, it would go into a trust for her and would not impact her benefits. However, you mentioned that you are also on. So if this trust that you're currently working with is a third party trust, then there is no Medicaid payback, and whatever funds are left upon your death then could be turned over to your daughter's trust. If the trust that you have is a first party trust, Medicaid, as Kathy mentioned, has first right to those funds. They expect to be paid back. So if your trust is a first party trust and there is some money left over at the end and you are on Mass Health, they have the right to go back through the life of your trust, your lifetime of benefits, and ask to be paid back. So again, this would be a call. Give us a call. We're happy to talk to you about your specific situation. Because I don't know all the particulars, I can't really answer it definitively, but give us a call.
So I see up there, it says that you said a minimum amount to start one is 2,000.
No,
I think that maybe we didn't explain it correctly. We were talking about your benefits, Medicaid, SSI. It's what they call a means test, which means you cannot have more than $2,000 in assets
in your own name.
in your own name.
So any amount that you have over that, you could put into a special needs trust. You do not need $2,000 to start a trust. Though we highly recommend that you start with if you could put $10,000 in a trust, then you could then have the money invested. So if the money is under $10,000, it goes into cash. So again, feel free to call us if we're not clear, but there is no minimum to set up a special needs trust with plan. You just want to make sure that you have no more than $2,000 in your own bank account cash assets, that anything over $2,000, you might want to then consider putting into a trust. What is the fee for the trust? So to set up a trust, we have a one-time enrollment fee, which depending on if it's a first party, third party, if you have a power of attorney, the amount is different. But if it's a third party trust, it's $500. It's again a one-time fee so that the trust documents can be reviewed by our attorney. And then once the trust is funded, so if it's a future funded trust, there's no charge after that until you fund the trust. So once the trust receives the funds, it's a 3% annual fee, which covers the investment of the funds, the trust administration of the funds, and the service coordination of the funds, which, having service coordinators and the professional management of the funds, the investment of the funds, that's huge. So again, we are all inclusive and, we consider it quite competitive. Several years ago, we set up a trust, non-special needs, for our son who is now 21. I assume that this trust could be converted to a special needs trust. That's a good question.
It is a good question, and I would actually recommend that you go back to the attorney who set the trust up. There has to be certain language in trust documents.
Right. So if the trust that you set up has not been funded, this is not an issue. If there is money already in the trust in your son's name, that's where you need to consult with an attorney. So if you set up a trust and you did not fund it, and now your son is disabled, you can choose not to fund the first trust and just set up a special needs trust and fund that instead. If it is funded, there's language to decant over, but I think that you need to really speak to an attorney to find out. We don't know how much is in the trust. We don't know if it's revocable. We don't know if it's irrevocable. So you do need to speak to an attorney or whoever helped you set that trust up. Can a 529 account be converted to a special needs trust? So we've had this question before. So a 529 account, I think, can be converted to an ABLE account.
Yes.
So you
because
could
it's managed by the same people.
Right. So you could convert it to an ABLE account. I don't believe you can convert it to a special needs trust, but I can certainly look into that. What's that? Oh, so Maria's asking me to ask if anybody has any more questions. Wow, you had a lot of questions and we are thrilled to get such a response. If you have any other questions that you think of after we hang up, or you want to shoot us an email, we do have an email listed if you don't want to call us on the phone. Send us whatever questions you have and we will try and get answers to those. And if we don't know, we'll reach out to others to try and get answers to those questions.
Right. So I think that Joan just talked about this. If your special needs person has over the 2,000 held in his own name, you really do need to think about able or special needs trust so that he doesn't lose his benefits.
And rather quickly, yeah. All right,
So I know that Maria just showed me yesterday that I guess we have a questionnaire up there for feedback. So we would love to hear back from people, if you found this helpful, or are there other topics that Joan and I can address for you?
any sort of constructive criticism, kind constructive criticism would be appreciated. We are trying to get the word out. And, anything you can provide would help. So feel free to complete that questionnaire or reach out to us.
So yes, the SSDI does not have a means test, but if he's on Mass Health or Medicaid, that does. So it would, that benefit would be at risk.
Okay, yeah. Well, the questions keep coming. That's great. Thank you so
No,
much.
it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, so, all right, so we'll wait 2 more minutes to see if there's anything else to come in. But again, as I said before, we understand this is a major commitment and there is no charge for calls. Please reach out to us. We're here to help and, we'll do our best. So I guess we'll give you 15 minutes back of your time. And thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Have a good afternoon, everyone.